Hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the cosmicqueer podcast. My name is Kim, I go by she, they pronouns, and I'm so glad you're here! I'm so glad you exist. Oh, what a beautiful day. Happy new moon in Libra. It's been a few days now, I suppose. Today is the 8th, because we record this in divine fucking timing, and if I am hatching, I am hatching, and I don't force myself to do shit, because we know it's not gonna go well. But yeah, happy new moon in Libra. Hopefully you guys are starting to come out of your energetic hidey holes and are starting to feel a little bit more comfortable with creating and taking inspired action towards your dreams and your purpose and all of the beautiful goals that are swirling around in that brain of yours. I'm just glad you exist, and I'm glad that you're here with us right now at such a pivotal time in our world, in the world's life cycle, if you will. Yeah, so we're gonna cover a little bit of the political shit, or not even like political, the ego side shit that's been going on, the colonization that's been going on in the last couple weeks between the full moon and now. I'm not gonna get too heavy into it. I don't want that to become the focus, even though I could easily make it the focus and I could go off for hours about all the shit that's going on. That's not helpful for the audience that I have, because I don't want to burn you guys out with more knowledge, but I do want to keep you as informed as I can so that you are able to take the steps to get involved and educate others so that we are coming together as a collective but not destroying our emotional wellness in the process. So I'm going to try to find a little bit of balance there and cover some of the details that have been going on in the last couple of weeks as a short intro to the show, and then we're going to focus more so today on burnout recovery. I've been seeing a lot of videos popping up on my TikTok, which might just be my own algorithm fucking me up, but a lot is coming out about guilt and shame and burnout recovery, and not really having concrete steps for burnout recovery. I was seeing a lot of content being made by different TikTok creators and folks reaching out saying yeah, I've spoken to my therapist or their helper, social worker, whoever it might be, and the person kind of is you're doing amazing, it's fine, and it kind of bypasses the experience of burnout itself and needing to have some support to crawl out of that burnout. And it can feel like such a deep, vast hole to be stuck in. And so when somebody invalidates that, or when there isn't enough information to help people get a grasp on my words, to get a grasp on the rope ladder to get out of that hole, it can be even more overwhelming and it can feel a lot more isolating. And I think sometimes that happens because people just don't have the answers, or they might not have had the experiences themselves. And so I'm going to talk about that today. My focus is going to be on assisting you through the kind of depth of the guilt and the shame that can come along with burnout, because it's really about recognizing in a non-judgmental way, or as much as you can, that it's not your fault you're burnt out, but it is within your power to change it. It's within your power to make adjustments in your life to prevent it from happening again. So I'm going to share some of my own experiences and some of my own examples of how I've taken those baby steps in the last kind of year or so here. Burnout recovery can be a 3 to 5 year process, if not longer, and it's so individual and non-linear anyway, but I'm going to share a little bit about my own experiences, and hopefully kind of humans learn from other humans doing things, and even though this is more of a auditory thing, hopefully hearing what works for me will inspire you to identify the things that might work well for you, or to take some of the steps, or at least release and absolve a little bit of the fucking shame. Because really, I think burnout is the product of responding to shame thoughts and pressure and capitalism. It's capitalism, but it's that response to shame and guilt that forces us to keep pushing ourselves beyond our capacity so that we can produce more, so that we can do more, accomplish more, be more. When we're here to be human beings, we're not here to be doing a whole bunch of shit and clocking in at places and overdoing it. So I think, what do I think? I think this is going to be more about assisting you, me offering you a hand in possibly the depths of despair, especially right now. Like, who's fucking not burnt out going through COVID? So that's going to be the focus for today. But first, I'm going to do a little coverage on what's been going on. So we've got 7 planets still in retrograde, I believe. Did something go direct this week? I have to check, but something is going direct soon. I think I had the same like fall apart last time of like what planets are going direct, but something is at some point. It's going to get better. With the new moon in Libra, it's also about bringing in justice, a lot of darkness coming to light, which has been happening for the last several months anyway. But I believe that we're kind of getting to an energetic culmination point of enough being enough, and of the collective being more than aware of all of the darkness that's going on and not being willing to participate in it anymore. So with that being said, it is the ongoing call to action that I'm asking you to take on is that of our indigenous leaders all over the world. Indigenous Two-Spirit leaders are stepping up, and not just Two-Spirit, but a lot of Two-Spirited individuals are also leaders, have been stepping up and asking us to heed their call, oh my god, retrograde, so that we can protect the sacredness that is nature, that is the target of the colonization that's been ongoing for so long. I'm not going to get into a huge rant about colonization because this is what we do every time, but the problem isn't just a pipeline, isn't just the mature growth forests in Fairy Creek, the last mature growth being logged in Canada, which is funded and supported by fucking Trudeau, and it's ridiculous, but it's not just about Enbridge, it's not just about governments, it's not just about one individual group. Well, it kind of is. But sometimes it can be easy to focus on the distractions of the nihilism of it all, the doom and gloom of it all, of seemingly so many different avenues for this darkness to come in and for nature to be attacked, right? This is more about aligning with the indigenous communities themselves, because they are the original survivors of ongoing colonization. Like, it's never stopped, but we've all been colonized as humanity, as a collective. We've just been raised in it, so we don't necessarily understand it all, and it's about unlearning a lot of the colonization, which will link in with the burnout, but unlearning the colonization practices also means unlearning and taking responsibility for the racism that we all carry, that has been bred into us, that has been taught to us through the way that school systems work, through the history books that the colonizers fucking wrote. Like, it's kind of so obvious that it's a bit laughable how prevalent the colonization has been. Like, they haven't even changed up their tactics, right? Like, they've got their school systems, they've got the Catholic school systems, we have Catholic systems being used to continue colonizing, even when we look at like the foster care system and the child welfare system. Though sure they don't use residential schools anymore, we still have group care, we still, with underqualified people, we still have faith-based groups running nonprofits and running foster care programs and group care programs, and all of those values, if they've not been checked, and it's not because religion is necessarily a bad thing, but it can be a tool that's used for a lot of fucking violence, right? All of those systems are still the things in place, so it doesn't matter that we don't have what's called a residential school anymore, which really was another mechanism for genocide. It was not a school. It was not fucking residential. It was a tool for colonization and genocide, which is the same thing that the child welfare system is, that the foster care system is, that schools are. They're all colonization to different degrees based on privilege and oppression, and based on the interests of the ruling class that is continuing to colonize. Yeah. So this is a petition checkpoint. If you have not yet signed petitions around stopping certain pipelines that we are aware of, or stopping Fairy Creek, helping animals that are endangered or being attacked, or sanctioned violence against animals from the government, like coyotes and the Idaho wolf population, to name a couple. Or if you've not taken a look at some of the things that are going on, I encourage you to go check out my Linktree, and I've got a bunch of different petitions listed there at the top. The rest of my info is near the bottom, but I need you to go take a peek right away. Also, this is another reminder to amplify and genuinely actively seek out Indigenous leadership in social media and amplify their content as much as you can. It doesn't mean that you need to not use your discernment in terms of whether someone is whether someone is reputable or has integrity with what they're doing with their content, because it doesn't mean that everybody has reputable content, but it does mean that we can take the steps to de-racialize a little bit of the algorithm by counteracting it with intention. So if you're seeing Indigenous creators, if you're seeing Indigenous leaders, people of color, everybody, but please do your best to counteract the racistly, that's a word now, based algorithms so that we can help them get the attention that they actually deserve to receive on these platforms, and that the world needs them to receive so that we can continue protecting the earth. Yeah, that's what we think about that. There was unfortunately a massive oil spill off the coast of California. If you did not hear about that, that was this week. Surprise, surprise, it was another Texan oil company, which I'm pretty sure they're all the same fucking people, they just have a bunch of different names for their companies, but honestly, that's who's responsible. If anything has been made horrendously clear this week alongside the release of the Pandora Papers, aka our Eat the Rich menu of about 300 odd people who've been moving and hiding their money all over the place, and the ongoing attempts to desecrate the earth that are connected to those people and to a lot of other systems that are connected, it's that this is a global colonization problem. The current systems that we have in place were built to facilitate this colonization, which is why politicians are not batting a fucking eye when people are calling them out for this, because it's intentional. They're like, yeah, what? This is what we've been doing the whole time. And we're not going to stop because we want your dependency on us. We want you to continue going to work. We want you to continue to participate in this fucking energy grid, trading all of your labor until you die, so that we can continue going on doing whatever the fuck we want, becoming billionaires, right? It doesn't serve them, which is why they're the wrong leaders. And they're showing it in abundance that they are not the people who are meant to be leaders. And they never have been, right? It's just been that power differential, and I think we're finally getting to a place with all of the planetary upheaval, all the cosmic shit going on, all of the just straight up 3D upheaval that we're experiencing here. It's going to come to a point where everything shifts. But first we have to get through the discomfort of the contrast and acknowledging it and taking the action that we can to counteract all of this darkness and all of this shit that's going on is it feels like such a small step sometimes, but it's so crucial because we model it for everybody else. And if we're reflecting that we don't care, or that we're apathetic, or that we have nihilism or whatever, that's what we're reflecting onto other people, and that's what they're going to take on as well. And so this is an opportunity for you to be a leader in terms of how are we going to handle all of these crises that are going around us, and how are we going to handle all of this truth that has been spoken about all of these dark systems that are in play or in power. What are we going to do with it? They aren't going to live forever, and it's not about waiting them out, but fuck, they're not going to live forever, and we have other generations of adults who are ready, and who have fucking integrity, so let's go. Let's fucking go. The point with me sharing all of this isn't just as my rage outlet, though that is a part of it for sure, but it is to show you guys that these are intentional steps to continue colonization. We have a responsibility as a collective to decolonize our own minds and then proceed to actively assist others to do the same. It doesn't mean that we're perfect, it doesn't mean we need to profess perfection or anything like that, but the learning is going to be cyclical and never-ending, so it means being prepared to be called out if you're wrong, which please do if I'm ever wrong, and I'm sure I will be and have been several times. But it's about being prepared to learn and acknowledge that, especially if you're white, that you benefit from all of these racist systems that are in place and from all of this colonization, whether you agree with it, whether you would have brought it in or not. You benefit. That's what we need to acknowledge. And that's what we need to, that's why it can't be about fighting indigenous people for calling someone a colonizer, or saying that we're being racist to white people. Like, that's why it can't be about that. That's a distraction from the actual problem, and it's massively invalidating to the absolute genocides that people of color and indigenous folks have experienced and are experiencing. This isn't over by any means. This is the turning point. We've been in a turn for such a long time. This is humanity's liberation, and you get to be here experiencing it and watching it happen, and you get to choose what side of history you're going to be on, whether you'll be on the side of nature, which is led by the indigenous leaders, or whether you're going to be on the side of, like, fucking, drinking oil, capitalism, because maybe you can be a billionaire one day, right? And I'm not accusing anybody here, it's just me being passive-aggressive about my rage, but, like, it's not about that anymore. But capitalism breeds greed for a reason. It's a massive distraction from what's actually happening, because if we're too focused on how much we can accumulate and consume, we don't pay attention to the measures that are being taken for us to do that. We don't pay attention to the pipelines being built, to the trees being cut, right? It's so important right now during all of this upheaval to prioritize your own well-being so that that can be reflected out, because at the end of the day, we are nature. We are divine beings, just like the earth is this divine entity. We are on a rock in space, yes, but we aren't here to fucking be taking part in capitalism. We're not here to be exploited. We're here to be and to experience the full spectrum of being a human being. So prioritizing your well-being extends to the earth's well-being by proxy. Because if you're in a more well-adjusted place, if you're feeling balanced, if you're feeling well, you have more energy to do something, to take action, which is why they don't want us to have energy. That's why burnout is the effect of capitalism. That's why all of these things exist, why mental health crises exist, because they are byproducts of a system meant to cause that. It's meant to disempower you, it's meant to exhaust you and deplete you and exploit you so that you don't have any fucking energy to do anything about what you see happening or what you might hear about it happening. Yeah, probably not done talking about capitalism, but I'm definitely done talking about all the fuckery that's been going on, because my focus is on you guys and helping beautiful cycle breakers like you work through your burnout, work through being a fucking cycle breaker at a time like this. And it's kind of like we're collectively stepping up to be cycle breakers with the way that the world has been run. And we started that process by being individual cycle breakers in our family systems or in our whatever systems that we kind of began acknowledging these patterns that needed to be broken. And I think that the most effective way I can empower you guys for today's episode is by just walking you through some of these feelings of discomfort and hopefully meeting you where you're at a little bit and extending a hand and just helping you recognize that you're not by yourself in these experiences, because holy shit, I know the loneliness can be absolutely crushing. Absolutely crushing. And when you are combating burnout, or even just finally coming to terms with the fact that you might be burnt out, which I don't blame you if you are, it can be suffocating all at once. And cool, I'm burnt out, now fucking what? Right? Now fucking what? And if you're burnt out because the people in your life or in your environment are either directly contributing to it or invalidating your experience or just not helping you, it can feel even more impossible to even begin clawing your way out of that experience and out of that kind of energetic state of being. So that is why we're here. I find that burnout is something much more prevalent, obviously, in neurodivergent communities, though it can happen to anybody. The reason that it happens more for neurodivergent folks, I believe, is because of the exponential amount of energy it takes us to mask. And that also means, like, masking to participate in capitalism, so, like, everyone is masking to a different degree. And I kind of have this theory that neurotypical, like, doesn't exist, that we're all neurodivergent, and that neurotypical people are the ones who either bought into the systems that are around us because they benefit from them, so like the colonizer mentality, or they like more effectively found a way to mask. Or they chose that ignorance, which made it a lot easier to participate in the systems around them without recognizing that the kind of like systemic shit that's going on within those systems, if that makes sense, because neurodivergent folks, especially like folks on the autism spectrum or folks who have like that greater sense of justice, can really see through the patterns that systems show us, which is why when we go to a new job, we can see a lot of ways we can help with efficiency, for example. But it also means we see through people's bullshit, and we see through systemic bullshit, and we can see the intention of policies that are in place or the way that things are structured. We can understand the intentions. And so with that, masking so that either that's not seen or so that you're not spewing that out because it's the most obvious thing for you can be exhausting. And even just trying to like mask so that you're not showing the discomfort you're experiencing right now in a pandemic in the middle of all of this turmoil is exhausting. We tend to be taken advantage of when we are highly gifted, when we are neurodivergent, when we are empathetic, when we're skilled in that way, when we can relate with people well, or even just not even about relating with people, but if we can build systems well or work well independently or whatever. Jobs, relationships, they love to dump on all of that extra labor to us because we seem capable, and it's not a matter of being capable or not. It's a matter of having equity in terms of the expectations of labor that folks are doing in the relationships they take a part of, or the systems that they are a part of, whether it's your job, an institution, or whatever, right? I feel that we end up getting taken advantage of and overworked, but then that also creates an imbalance because of the intentions of others when they're overworking us. They're never going to be like, it's because I don't want to do as much, right? So manipulation can come into play in passive aggression and subliminal things, and again with the neurodivergent communities, we might not always pick up on those more subtle cues of what they're doing. We also might see exactly what they're doing, but if we're in a place where we're manipulated into taking on more labor, for example, whatever that might look like, it can also turn into a struggle with boundaries for us, because we might see exactly what's going on and still choose to do it because we don't know how to say no, or we have associated our worth with our productivity, so we're like, well, if I say no, I'm not doing the thing, that's bad. I'm bad. I'm not allowed. I'm not allowed to say no because I'm good at the thing, so I need to go do the thing, or because this person is uncomfortable with the thing, so I should do it so that they're not uncomfortable. And all of those are examples of like giving them your power, but also stepping right over any boundaries you've crossed or you've set for yourself and crossing them yourself to meet someone where they're not even willing to take a first step. We do a lot of extra work for people, which is masking, like not following your own boundaries and fucking bailing people out and doing all this shit. That's masking as well, because we're not being authentic. I think that masking is anytime you're not being fucking authentic and you're not saying what you feel or mean. Yeah. So that being said, burnout symptoms can often look like depression and anxiety and being overstimulated or being like understimulated, or dissociation. It can just be tapped out energetically, like you could just be absolutely exhausted and nothing seems to help you regain any sense of energy. It can be a nervous system that is constantly like in fight or flight mode and firing and going and going and going. But it can also be a nervous system that doesn't respond to anything, where you've fully shut down. Burnout is an individual experience, and it can change depending on the causation of the burnout and the individual who's experiencing it and what's going on for them, and the protective factors and the strengths and resiliencies that they have, as well as the privileges and oppressions that they experience or benefit from, don't benefit from. But these symptoms don't mean that that's what you are, and that that's what's happening for you in terms of like, now you're depressed, now you have this. There doesn't need to be a permanence associated with it. They are indicators. They're kind of like red flags that these are what's going on for you. how do we get ourselves back into stasis? It's kind of like a massive nervous system response saying, hey, we're not okay. We've not been okay. Help. It means help. It means reevaluate your fucking boundaries. It means reevaluate where you're spending your energy, who you're spending your energy with, and whether you're actually receiving or experiencing equity or reciprocity in the relationships that you are participating in. You might not know that you're burnt out until you're well into your recovery process. You also might not validate for yourself that what you're experiencing is burnout. Like, you might be one who minimizes it or says, nope, it's just depression, or it's just this, or it's just this, or it's just this. And that's totally valid, and nobody has to shove a label down anybody's throats. But if you have a lot of demands that keep you from slowing down, that keep you from taking the space that you need to rest and heal and spend time with yourself, like spend quality time with yourself, then I invite you to reevaluate how you're spending your time. And it's not because you're doing something wrong, it's not because you necessarily even have a choice sometimes with the way that capitalism just like has us working 8 million jobs and all hours of the day, and how it kind of fucks with all aspects of the way that a human nervous system is supposed to function. This is why none of this is your fault. But it doesn't mean that it has to continue that way. This is an invitation to remind you of your power and of your autonomy and your sovereignty and your ability to choose for yourself and choose differently. So for me, for example, some of the signs that I'm beginning to burn out, or that I'm kind of going back in that direction, is that I stop prioritizing myself and my self-care. So that can be like hygiene, that can be eating, that can be getting outside and spending time in nature, doing things that I enjoy. It's kind of like you start punishing yourself, right? And it can even be like not hydrating enough, or not like taking the time to fill up your water bottle, or subbing in more caffeine. Like if you notice that as you get more stressed, you might have more coffees in that day, or more substances, or whatever you might need to keep you going. But these are all still byproducts of the emotional impact that burnout is indicating for us. You might be like noticing that you have signs of like irritability, or you're a bit snappy or frustrated, but you could also be, these are kind of like iceberg feelings that are leading to feeling unsafe, feeling attacked or triggered or tripped up, feeling unworthy, feeling guilty, feeling ashamed, feeling invalidated, just not good enough, right? And like, I really think that that's the core of burnout, is like a self-worth wound, because I think that's what capitalism extorts. And when we buy into that notion, and then we go try to be the most productive, amazing person we can be, and high achieving, and just go be a superstar, that's amazing. But the systems in which we participate don't encourage self-care in an authentic way. They're like, yeah, you can do self-care as long as like you still work 60-hour weeks, and as long as you still do this and this, and you're available for overtime, but we won't pay you, and you're available to skip your kids' soccer practice or whatever. Like, there's always a handoff, but it's never actually been about your well-being from these systems' point of view. It's about what you can do for them for the least amount possible, with the least amount of complaints. The people around us, the systems around us, contribute to our burnout, not always intentionally, not always maliciously, but they can contribute to it. And if they are crossing your boundaries, or asking you to adjust your boundaries, self-betray, or invalidate your experiences in any way, this can be a massive indicator and a fast track to the shame and guilt train again, because it makes it a lot harder to take care of ourselves when we're blaming or feeling ashamed of setting a boundary with somebody and protecting ourselves, because that shame and guilt is kind of the first emotional response that we experience after we've set a boundary. It's like, okay, now I'm a terrible person, I'm a bitch, excellent, everyone hates me, amazing. Like, that's kind of the first aspect. And if we get stuck in that spiral, or if that person gets in your ear or whatever, it can be really easy to go back on your boundaries that you've set and to engage in non-reciprocal interactions, if that makes sense. So yeah, Yeah, 1 second, we're gonna switch it up for the next recording, and yeah. Alright, sorry about the little delay there. So I'm gonna preface this next part of the burnout section by saying that my approach to recovery was a little bit radical. I'm always a little bit radical with how quickly I might set my bed on fire, but I realized I was burnt out and being taken advantage of and being abused in my situation, so the reason that I was radical was it made sense, but I want to invite you to use your own discernment, your own intuition in terms of how anything I say applies to you ever, but also in terms of how you carry out any action in your life. Make sure that it matches what you need and what you authentically know would work better for you. So some of my examples are going to be a little wild. Some of them maybe a little reckless. So we'll start with those ones, and then we'll get into some kind of like day-to-day examples that I have as well to hopefully help give you some ideas on how you can start digging yourself out of this hole. So as I said earlier, the first part of burnout recovery is evaluating where your energy is either being like overextended or exploited and trying to bring it back in as many ways as you can, because it's kind of like, oh, I've overextended, how can I draw this back to myself in some sort of way? This means taking a really hard look at your relationships, your job, or whatever employment might look like for you, whatever that world looks like for you, where you spend your time, with whom you spend your time, and paying attention to how your body feels in those environments and around different people. Burnout, I think, is kind of connected to like not listening to your intuition, because I think our bodies are always screaming at us, and when we go in the opposite direction or keep plundering forward anyway, that's when we start like depleting our energy reserves. And we can do that for so long, but eventually our body is like, hey, I can't do it anymore, and that's when burnout kind of like pulls the rug out from under you and you get sick, or it kind of just becomes impossible to ignore. Like you might start getting sick all the time, or becoming like really irritable, or shutting down, or just like not being able to function in the way that you used to. Nothing to be ashamed of. Absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. The first step is awareness. The second step is like, okay, now who's contributing to why this is a problem for me? Because what is happening here? And it could be that the call is coming from inside the house, and that you're somebody who like is recovering from people pleasing, or wants to be involved in 8 million projects all the time, and you need to learn temperance, or whatever that might be. Taking away the blame aspect of it, though, and acknowledging that like, oh, I'm a human and sometimes I do too many of the things, can be a really powerful way to remind yourself that you're not a fuck up because you're burnt out. And you're burnt out because you were just superheroing it for way too long. So acknowledge that you're a badass motherfucker, and that nobody gets to take advantage of you anymore. Burnout is kind of like a fried nervous system that's been firing on survival mode for way too long, and we keep just trying to like rev it up without taking the moment to let the nervous system reset itself. It's like overheating a computer and being surprised when like it's slower to start up or to like open a program, right? You need to take a moment and put it on a fan or turn it off. Unplug it. Quit comparing yourself and your progress and your output to others. Like right now. Stop it. Stop it. And find out if you aren't. Looking over at what other people are doing or achieving is a surefire way of slipping into a self-guilt trip if you're not careful with it, if you're not aware of all of those thoughts and what happens or how you feel in response to those thoughts being allowed to fully play themselves out in your head. You are doing enough. You have always been doing enough. Capitalism was built to make you believe that your productivity is linked to self-worth, and thus your worthiness of meeting your needs and setting boundaries is connected to whether you have been productive or not, right? So this is obviously easier said than done to like detach that way of thinking that's been programmed into us, but here's a little bit of how I broke it down over time. I consciously decided that I was going to try to catch myself whenever I saw somebody doing something that I either aspired to do as well or wished that I could experience one day. even if that meant like allowing myself to feel jealousy or envy in some way, or longing, right? Allowing yourself to dream and envision things, because a lot of the times when we're kids and we try to talk about the big dreams that we have, some adult somewhere is gonna talk shit to you and make you think you're an idiot for dreaming anything because they're jaded, they've bought into all this shit, they're nihilists, they're hopeless. A lot of the time, that same person's voice might have turned into our own, but that becomes a limiting belief that when we try to dream bigger as adults or as we get older, we also stamp on those ourselves. Like, we're kind of like, nope, fuck that. I don't get to believe in anything. I don't get to dream. I don't get to have a better life. Of course you do. Of course you do. But there are powers at play that benefit from you thinking that you don't have any power in doing that. So allow yourself to look at what other people are doing, but don't let yourself compare in a way that, like, equates it to your self-worth, where, well, if only I were doing this, or if I had that experience, my life would be better. It can be like, oh wow, there's an example of a cool thing I could be doing, because it exists. There's proof that something exists, or that inspires me, I would do it this way. Those are beautiful things. We get stuck when we tell ourselves that, oh, nope, I can't have that, no, I can't dream, no, I'm poor, no, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this. There's like a million limiting beliefs that we apply to one single thing, which is why it can be so painful to see the success of others, and why we can get into that loop of comparison rather than appreciation of what we're seeing and learning from it and building on those things that we see, because we're the ones creating the reality that we're in. I allowed myself to feel what came up, and I continued with the thoughts until I could appreciate what they were doing and learn from it or aspire to the thing without shaming myself for what I'm doing currently, what my life looks like currently, or what I'm not doing. It wasn't about a guilt trip for my lack of productivity or for the productivity that I've done before or the way I've spent my energy before. It can't be about that. It was about coming to the understanding that what other people are doing is literally none of my fucking business. But if I see them doing something cool, I can fucking applaud it, and if it's something I want to do one day, I can add it to the roster of things that I want to do into all of my ideas. But it doesn't have to be about kicking myself for not being good enough because I'm not exactly where that person is right now, you know? It's about using blinders when you need to on this road, but also ushering yourself back to your own lane when you find yourself starting to get into the comparison mindset rather than appreciating what you're seeing or learning from and being inspired from what's around you. It's not helpful to compare when it goes to that place, right? We learn from others and how they do things, but that doesn't mean that our worth is connected to how well we can match what somebody else is doing, because your life is individual. You have a certain level of experiences that you've had, and all of those combined are so unique, and then experience through the lens that is you and your being is so invaluable. So no, you can't make your life a cookie cutter copy of the next person or of somebody that you really value or admire, because you're meant to do something different. You're meant to do something unique and beautiful, and if you're here, you're likely meant to be a leader. Capitalism wants you to compare. They want you to check and see if you're keeping up with the Joneses and have the next iPhone and all this bullshit. Fuck the Joneses. Fuck the Joneses. You're doing enough. You're doing enough. There is so much to be said for staying in your own lane and just hanging out with your own energy. There's so much to be said for it. It's a beautiful experience, and getting in burnout is kind of like forcing you to get into that place of it. Sorry, Coconut's like nesting on the couch. I don't know if you can hear him rumbling. Sir, please. Oh my goodness, so unprofessional. I don't know what I was saying now. Meh. Fuck the Joneses. I'm going back to that. Sit with yourself and write out your responsibilities. What are your non-negotiables? What are the things every day that you have to do? What are the things you want to do? And try to reconcile those. Like, budget your energy better. Burnout is like an indicator that we need to budget our energy better, isn't it? So Sit down and write the things that you might be expected to do from other people, from other places, systems that you have to take part in. Put that all down, and then look at the things that are like actually rigid. Evaluate if they actually really are, but move the things around that you can. Like, you actually have more wiggle room than you realize, but when we're trying to resolve a lot of our issues just in our head, it can be really overwhelming. And you have the ability to brain dump all of that out on a piece of paper or on a Word doc or whatever, and map out your life again and redistribute your energy. It's really an empowering exercise if you're feeling like so disempowered in this state of burnout. If you notice when you do that maybe you don't have free time that you're able to allocate for yourself during the day, or that like any free time you have, you try to like fill it with being productive in another way, or you'll bring like 80 tasks with you to do the like chill time, like you're gonna go sit in front of the TV for a bit, but you bring like 3 things you could be working on, or you're checking your emails or whatever. That's not giving yourself free time, right? Where can you wiggle in 15 minutes just for yourself, 5 fucking minutes, 3 minutes, just starting with something to show your body and your soul that you give a fuck about yourself, and that you're going to take a few minutes to just hang out. Because you don't have to be on all the time. You don't have to be doing something marketable all the fucking time. You just need to be. Are the systems that you have in place, either with like work, home, personal care, like house care tasks, are they working for you, or are they working against you? And at that, how do you fucking treat yourself during these experiences? Like, how do you treat yourself when you're cleaning your house, or when you go to work, or when you sit down, if you're self-employed, when you sit down to do what you're working on? How do you treat yourself when you're taking downtime or relaxing? What are the things going on in your head? Because sometimes we don't realize that we're repeating patterns from our childhood, or from the formative times when limiting beliefs were put there, or when trauma was put there. And then our body and our nervous system plays the last CD, and it's like, okay, well, last time we remembered having quiet time, it was actually hell time, and we beat ourselves up the whole time, and we went into a spiral, and we freaked out and told ourselves that everything is going to hell. That's what you're going to do next time, until you catch the train and redirect it, which is how you already are a cycle breaker, because you've caught a lot of patterns in your life to this point, and you've probably spoken a lot of truth to this point. But I find that cycle breakers, especially my beautiful neurodivergent cycle breakers, we are really good at deflecting the attention from everybody but ourselves. And we're really good at almost bypassing some of the thought patterns that we have and that we experience, to the point that we experience burnout because we haven't acknowledged it. We might not even see what we're not acknowledging anymore because object permanence, but like, yeah, take the time to evaluate the systems that are in place. You are an autonomous being, and you have the full right to change anything that does not suit you. There are no fucking rules. All of the rules are made up, right? You can change how you do the dishes. You can change what your laundry system is, when you do your fucking cleaning, how you do it, the sensory experience that is your home. You can put whatever fucking lights you want. You can change the color light bulbs. You can put nice music on in the background. You can put plants everywhere. You can do whatever the fuck you want. You can do whatever the fuck you want. You can put LED strips in your kitchen if you want to. There are so many different things that, and those are kind of like silly examples, but they're things that you can do to make your environment suit you. And if that also means making sure that your house care isn't reflective of like being raised in a patriarchal system, then do that. Decolonize how you experience your life, and you will experience more peace. But we can't decolonize what we're not looking at, and what we're not paying attention to, which is why it can be really helpful to write it down, and to take space to be like, okay, what the fuck do I do every day? Why am I so tired? You're allowed to take that space for yourself. You're allowed to figure that out and learn. And you're never going to be done learning. You don't need to reach a certain level of like productivity or doneness or recovery to be valid or to be worthy of rest and love and self-care. I think the boundaries that need to be set or changed are with yourself first and with how you treat yourself first, because I think we're all our worst critics. We're our biggest bullies. We're our harshest inner voices sometimes, and we can be really sharp with ourselves. Taking the moment to make your space more peaceful or make your experience of life in this moment more peaceful, because we only have the present moment, everything else is a memory or hasn't happened yet, is so valuable and is such a radical act of self-love in a system such as this. For example, with cleaning, I'm sure I'm not the only millennial who was raised by boomer parents who I love, but who, I don't think they do this anymore, but they used to like want to do all the house cleaning every Saturday and just like bang it out, be up early, and all you do is like sweat and cry all day, and it's just a nightmare, right? It's just sensory overload. You're overstimulated. You got all these cleaning supplies, loud vacuums, like all sorts of shit going on, and it's like, that's your day off. That's your first day off. It took me fucking how many years into adulthood to realize that I do not need to cram all of my cleaning into one day, and that I don't need to like beat myself up if I don't do like 95 different cleaning tasks in that day. Do you know how much of a load off it was for me to be like, hey, actually, I'm 27. I'm not fucking doing my dishes tonight, actually. I'm not gonna do them. And I am not gonna go to hell for not doing them. And there will not be like a rodent infestation by tomorrow. Like, hopefully. You get to let yourself off the hook. And I think, like, burnout is staying on the hook. So this is about pulling yourself off of it so that you can start to breathe again. You can change up these systems infinitely, and you can change up your thought systems infinitely until you're happy with them. And like, with this cleaning example, I decided only this year, during my first year of burnout recovery, that I actually get to decide how I keep my house clean and how I manage the care tasks that are required to keep me alive and looking swell. I decided it, and I'm still probably going to change this shit over and over and over again, but it's kind of about accepting impermanence in terms of how we do things, and sometimes we get so comfortable in the patterns that we create or that others have created and we were raised in, that it's like, I'm not going to change it, it's comfortable. But if the comfort is exhausting you, it's not so comfortable. I wanted to have a more intuitive approach about how I go about my day and my career too. I wanted to be able to work with the lunar cycles, with when I make things, when I put out podcast episodes, when I show up and put out that energy, because it very much, like the moon cycles and energy levels wax and wane with me. Like my Cancer placements, and I'm ruled by the moon. It's my chart ruler. So like, I set out to have a more intuitive approach to how I approach everything in my life. How many more times can I say approach? And I wrote out a list of all of the house tasks I had so that they weren't swirling in my brain, because part of my stress with maintaining my house was like, I gotta remember to do this and this and this and this, and if I don't remember this, I don't remember this, and if I don't remember to put all the cleaning supplies here, then they're not gonna make it over here, and then I'm not gonna be able to do the thing upstairs. And it was kind of like I had too many different steps, like spaghetti in my head, that I'm trying to keep track of, and like that didn't make me any more productive. So I dumped them all onto a piece of paper and like took that load off, which like, brain dumps are amazing, and like, I don't know how many times I'm gonna say dump on the fucking air, but like, taking the space to put everything down on paper is so fucking therapeutic, and I'll probably never get off that high horse, but like, please do it if you're overwhelmed, and if you struggle with overanalyzing and overthinking and like things swirling and feeling forgetful. Find a place to write it, and if you have ADHD, find a place that's the same place every time so that you're not losing all of your thoughts, so they don't go into like a doom box somewhere. But I objectively looked at these tasks and chose to do it in a way that reflected unconditional love and acceptance for myself, and looked at the tasks, realized they weren't as big of a mountain as they appeared when I was trying to hold them all in my head, and broke it down so that I'm only doing 1 or 2 things a day. This kind of like covers my whole week cycle. Like there's some days where I'll do more things than others, and some days where I'll do fucking absolutely nothing. I also gave myself permission to be like, if I have no more spoons after I've like walked in my purpose enough for the fucking day, and everybody is alive and fed, and we have met all of our basic human needs or our basic needs here, that's enough. So I'm gonna leave the dishes, or I'm gonna do the podcast the next day if I'm exhausted, right? Like it's about deciding I'm not gonna force myself through something and to expend energy that I do not have anymore for a fucking care task, for something that actually isn't a priority. And with burnout, it can be like all of the things are a priority because they've all been left undone for so long, and it can feel like a mountain of like, well, I have all of these dishes now, or how am I going to prepare a meal for myself? How am I going to blah, 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 right? It's kind of about finding ways to non-judgmentally meet your needs despite the mountains that are around you, so that you can start to feel better about your environment, so that you're not contributing to your nervous system response with a shame spiral internally, right? So me wanting to have a more intuitive approach makes perfect sense with my fucking astrological placements, but also with like any human wanting to have an intuitive approach about how they manage their energy during the day should be fucking reasonable, but not in the systems that we've been living in, which is why I gotta burn them down. But I wrote out a list. I objectively looked at the tasks. I broke them down. I'm doing much less, but all my shit's getting done, and I don't have to fucking remember, and I don't have to write it down anymore. It's already done. I've already figured it out. I've already broken it down. I've put the things together. I've put tasks together that make more sense so that I'm not running up and down the stairs. I could do all of the things right here and have all of my cleaning supplies where they need to be, or I can have duplicates of cleaning supplies so that they're in the places that they need to be for the cleaning to occur. You can set up systems to make it easier for you to live. Neurodivergent, you've probably done that at every job you've been to. You've probably been like, what the fuck are you guys doing? This is so inefficient. Here's a binder I've just made for you. Or here's this thing I just made up out of thin air. Because you guys are magic. Apply that magic to your goddamn self. Please. Please. You're allowed. If you're somebody who struggles with change, adjusting your environment and how you approach anything can be really overwhelming and daunting. And you don't have to be like, I'm gonna overhaul my entire life right now. You can choose one thing. You can be like, okay, I'm in the beginning of burnout recovery. What do I need to do first? Am I eating enough? Is my body getting nourished enough? Am I hydrated enough? Okay, start with hydration. Do I have a system in place to help me get good water? Healthy water, clean water? Here we go. If you are one of the privileged folks who has access to clean drinking water from your faucet or from a Brita or whatever the fuck, amazing, how can you make sure you're filling that up? Do you have water bottles? Do you have whatever your system is? Is it accessible to you? Do you maybe keep a water bottle on your nightstand and you have a different one for when you're going to work, or you have a different one for when you're in a different part of your house? Do you have maybe some safe foods or snacks or safe meals that you can have on hand that you can make when you're having a really low energy day so that you're still eating something? It does not matter how nutritionally relevant the food is. If you are eating, that is important. And it is more important than not eating at all. So I do not care what you're eating, but as long as you're eating something. It's kind of like you need to take a harm reduction approach. Burnout is like you're at the end of the road. Harm reduction is what tiny baby step can I take right now that shows me some solidarity with myself. And it doesn't mean that I have to be capable of doing everything and fixing everything or overhauling everything. It means, how can I show myself some fucking kindness right now? If you've seen like those TikTok creators, especially ADHD creators with like the fridge reorganization where they're like, look, I have object permanence. I put all my normal like produce in my door now so I actually see it and it doesn't go bad. There are little things like that, and like follow creators like that because they probably have a lot of amazing ideas about other household systems that you can adjust to maximize for your neurodivergence. That's just one example. But like Can you make a little breakfast station? Can you make a space where, like, here's my meds and my quick grab and go breakfast information, food and shit? Like, where can you reduce the amount of energy you need to spend to meet a need, or to get something done that's going to be kind of an ongoing thing, like, nutrition. It's kind of like about recategorization, breaking down care tasks into smaller bites, even by taking 15 minutes to simplify some of your processes so that they aren't going to shut you down or overstimulate you, and acknowledging if they do overstimulate you that you're allowed to make those adjustments. Or if they're just an inefficient use of your energy, it can be really helpful for you to regain bits of your energy back each day by making those tiny changes. And it can be, I focus on trying to eat. That can be your goal. Like, you don't have to dig yourself out of burnout in one day. It will not happen. It'll take you years. And it's not because it's insurmountable, it's not because it's impossible, and it's not because you're not going to experience peace for 5 years. It's because you are resetting your fucking nervous system. And you're not doing it alone, and I'm here with you, and I love you, and you're doing enough. You're doing enough. It's a steady climb. It's about adjusting your personal expectations of what you should be doing every day and what energy you can actually expend on things every day. Don't bully yourself into doing more. Just try to make it easier on yourself so that you can build back your energy reserve. Not to go exploiting and depleting it again, but for yourself this time. Pour back into your own cup. Your care and wellness are always going to be more important than your job. And if you've never heard that before, your care and your wellness and your joy are more important in your mental health than your fucking job. And about pleasing others. And about the state of your house. You need to be your new priority. This is your way out. This is your way to sovereignty. Because prioritizing yourself above everything else is one of the most radical things you can do in a system that benefits from you not. Set boundaries. Like, I know I sound like a broken record on this, but people benefit from us with no boundaries, and they use you as an emotional dumpster, a therapist, a punching bag, a laborer, whatever it might be. Boundaries can be quitting your fucking toxic job if you have an abusive employer or abusive toxic systems in relationships, in institutions that you're taking a part of, in any systems that you have to experience. Walk out. If they are abusive, they will not change. They will not change. I used to work at a pretty shitty nonprofit. I've worked at many, but they consistently violated my employee rights and my boundaries, and they emotionally abused and gaslit the fuck out of me. And it wasn't until I was, like, over-explaining for, like, the 15th time how they were violating my rights and my boundaries, only to be gaslit again, that I was like, doesn't matter how much I say it. It doesn't matter how well I articulate it. This is not me having a communication problem. It's not you having a communication problem. If you can identify that there's shit going wrong, you can try to set the boundaries, you can try to preserve the thing, whatever it might be. But if it's falling on deaf ears, or if they're gaslighting you, if they're doing anything but acknowledging their fucking role, walk. Fucking walk. Staying in environments where we experience emotional abuse, especially narcissistic abuse, because of the gaslighting aspect, causes brain damage. Like, it causes brain damage, you guys. You are allowed to leave unhealthy relationships and jobs and places. It's necessary for your fucking survival. Once you acknowledge the first narcissist, though, or the first abusive system, be prepared to become very aware of replicated people, systems, abuse in the rest of your circle, in the rest of your life. Be prepared for similarities to show up. And it's not because every single person might be, they might be. But it's because we have patterns. And we seek out and attract the same chaos that we experienced. So if you're seeing it in a job, it could also be in your friend group somewhere. It doesn't mean it has to be every person. Sometimes it is, but you'll see similar patterns, and if you're not sure, set a really minor boundary with someone and see how they react. If they respect you, if they respect the boundary, cool. If they have a tantrum, if they bargain with you, if they gaslight you, they're a narcissist and they gots to go. If your mind feels like a particularly sharp hellscape, burnout recovery can feel a lot more daunting. And it can be such a process, and it's imperative that you're as gentle as possible with yourself. But if you struggle with a lot of that internalized negative self-talk, projections from other people is what that actually is, but I'd suggest taking a step back and trying to externalize your situation. And that just means taking the thing and detaching your sense of self-worth from it. And detaching the emotion in some way, if that's even possible for you. It takes practice, but if you kind of pretend that it is a child, your inner child, or somebody you care about, somebody you value, if you can't fathom giving a shit about yourself as a child, or that somebody would care about you, or like if you're just not there yet, put someone in your mind that you love and that you value. Now pretend they were telling you what you've been experiencing. How would you feel about what you're experiencing? Would you would you justify it to that person? Would you invalidate the shit out of them? Would you gaslight them? I hope not. If that would be your response, you have more work to do, but you would likely be fucking outraged. So why is it okay for you to experience high levels of abuse, but not the people you love? This can be painful because it can help us see the level of self-worth that we might be actually at, that we're holding and that we need to adjust. But it can also be a really cathartic and validating experience because we're really good at talking shit about ourselves and at minimizing our worth and what we're going through. We're not even fully sharing what we're going through because we don't think someone wants to hear it. Or there maybe isn't somebody who's able to hear it or hold space for you in an effective way. But if you write out what you're experiencing with those hands, it's real, it's tangible, it can't be denied. And when you write it down and you keep writing them down, you can start to identify the patterns that are happening in your life. And it's a lot harder to be gaslit when you're keeping track in some way as well. So if that is something you're experiencing, I would encourage you to keep some sort of record somewhere if you can do so safely. But taking the time to process what you've experienced as though it was somebody else or as though it was somebody you cared about can really validate what you're going through and help you to recognize that it's more problematic than maybe you've allowed yourself to acknowledge. And it can help you, from that point, open the door to making changes and to making incremental changes towards wellness and towards safety and stability again. Use the outrage that you feel from your experiences to fuel you towards making your changes, towards setting boundaries. Sometimes even the most minor adjustments can make a really massive difference. And I found that addressing my sensory needs was the first thing I needed to be doing, and I fucking ignored it for a really long time, but it's the core of everything. When somebody is overstimulated or understimulated, it can be hell for them, and anything can be impossible when you're already fucked up with your nervous system being nope, that touch is awful, or this sound is too much, or this experience is too overwhelming. How are you supposed to function? It kind of destabilizes you right from there. I actually found working with parents, and I'm not going to go on a huge side note on this or anything, but working with parents, very few of them genuinely wanted to be abusive or harmful towards their children. A lot of them didn't realize what they were doing was harmful if it was more emotional, and a lot of them were just barely surviving because they were so fucking overstimulated, and they had so many unmet sensory needs, and they were in such survival mode because of fucking capitalism. They were just doing their best. You're just doing your best. You're a triggered nervous system, and I'm not reducing you to that, but that is what you're running around in, is a triggered nervous system as a spiritual being. That's exhausting, and it's not normal to experience life that way, and unfortunately that's the way like the whole fucking world is experiencing it. But when I realized that like all of the parents I was working with, like, I'm like, oh, none of you are trash, and I never went in thinking they were trash, but like, people are always in the systems, people talk shit about parents so much, and it's ridiculous, and they're so disempowering, and that's part of why I got in shit so much, is because I advocated for people because I saw that what they were doing was a trauma response, or was triggered by a nervous system being way overstimulated, or by us not using emotional intelligence with how we treated the other people. So how can you use more normal? Be normal. How can you use more emotional intelligence with yourself? How can you meet your own sensory needs? How can you determine and discover what those are? Can you give yourself space to be like, I don't know, do I need more like visual sensory stuff? Do I need more auditory? Do I need to wear headphones to muffle sound? Do I need to, are there things that make a lot of sound that I can address or change so that I'm not being triggered by like day-to-day things? A good example of that is I struggle with being perceived, permanent hermit, but I have to walk my dogs to take them to pee. We don't have like a fenced yard or anything, and so we go on like 6 walks a day, and their collar tags jingle like the dickens, and I hate it. It took me forever, it took me a fucking year to realize that like I'm triggered before I even leave the house with them because of jangling their collars and putting them onto their necks and getting them all set up or whatever. Already overwhelms me and overstimulates me. So I think it was like this week that I was like, oh, I could tape their tags together and then they won't be so abrasive and they won't make so much noise. I can muffle that. Oh, I'm gonna put headphones by the door and I'm gonna put those suckers on every time I have to go. Without music doesn't matter, but no. And I'm gonna put on sunglasses so that I don't have to make eye contact with anybody. And especially when my dogs are acting a fool, because Lucy is injured, as you know, she needs surgery. If you want to donate, my GoFundMe is in my bio. But she has an injury. We are across from a chain link fence with like a walking path across from our house, so like there's constantly people walking around with their dogs. She's developed a lot of leash reactivity because of that. She doesn't have her own space that she actually gets to guard, and she's a shepherd, so she's like, wow, everything's gonna be guarded. And she's injured, so she's vulnerable. So she's a little psycho sometimes when we're outside, and it can be really hard for me to be patient with her and to like support her through that and to be a gentle dog parent when I'm overstimulated as fuck by her lunging and barking and by her tags going and by being fearful of being perceived and all this other shit that's going on. It's like we're both just absolutely triggered. And so I finally figured out different strategies that I could try to see if they would help her feel calmer, and if I could help me and her feel calmer and keep our nervous systems a little bit more balanced. I found we could have a lot more peaceful walks, and her reactivity went down. So, like, this is not a dog training thing, and I'm like, I am not a dog trainer, and I have so much to fucking learn. But that's just one example of how my nervous system can go from fully calm to triggered just by the fucking tags. And then I'm going out anxious and kind of tensed up from the experience of the sound. She's reading that from me. Kids read that from their parents too. And if we're going off my theory that everybody's fucking neurodivergent, everybody has sensory needs anyway. So many different things can trigger those sensory needs or overstimulate us in that way. And staying in an environment where that's perpetuated, yes, you sleepy lady, only compounds the burnout experience that we're going to have. So, like, giving yourself permission to not only acknowledge your neurodivergence, but acknowledge your sensory needs and figure out what they look like and what that can mean for you can really be a game changer in terms of honoring and adjusting to meet your needs so that you're not just surviving and reacting. You can find ways to, like, respond. It's about buffering yourself. And I give you permission to do that. Find ways to buffer your environment so that it's not constantly fucking triggering you. You don't deserve to be in an environment that triggers you. Yeah. Blundering forward without changing it or telling yourself that you don't deserve to take that time, or that you don't deserve to make it look a certain way, or that it has to be a certain way, or should, is a shame response. And it's probably not your own original thought. It might have become that over time, but my point with that is that you have the power to take any problem that you're experiencing, pull it out, and look at it objectively. Writing it is one way. You can do it however works for you, but that's just one way for me to, like, really externalize is by, like, physically putting it somewhere else. And somewhere where it's already recorded, so I don't have to, like, try to come up with the thoughts again one day in the future. It's, like, permanently done, which means I can safely let it go from my mind. Problem solving from that point of view can really minimize the impact and the triggers that we're experiencing, and it can be a really tangible way to help yourself out through this. Reducing the environments as well where you have to mask, or at least reducing the way that you mask, or giving yourself some sort of cushion time, decompression time in between these environments can be really helpful to help you meet your body's needs as well. Like, in these environments where we're masking, I found that I was less likely to meet my human body's needs when I was masking. Like, I would be like, no, I don't have to go to the bathroom. No, I don't have to eat. No, I don't need to drink water. Nope. Mm-mm. I wouldn't take that time for myself, and that might just be a me thing, but, like, I think it's an autism thing too, where it's like, you hold your pee, you don't meet your needs when you have them, because it means 8 steps to do the one thing. And sometimes that can be overwhelming. But you've got to give yourself permission to be a human again. And even if that means you can't just quit your job, or you can't just, like, up and leave every relationship, like, you can, and I invite you to, but if you can't do those things and you're stuck in places where you are masking, or you're not comfortable, or where you're gonna have a triggered nervous system, find ways to wiggle around them so that you can still do the thing, but take more care of yourself. So, like, okay, well, I still have to go to this job, okay, cool, but I'm gonna make sure I really build in recovery time, and when I come home, I'm gonna take a whole hour, I'm gonna take 15 minutes or whatever to just decompress and just spend time with myself and come back to my body, so that I'm not spending my rest time being fucking triggered from work all day, right? That's just one example, but I find this is very much more pronounced for neurodivergent folks, obviously, but we've been trying so hard to mask like neurotypical people to fit in and to avoid scrutiny and perception and bullying, and to make it can make it really easy to bypass our own needs in favor of approval. Learning to give yourself that approval. This shit is hard, especially with shame wounds. It takes practice. How would you speak to a child? How did your child self deserve to be treated when they had big emotional experiences, when they had sensory overstimulation or just sensory needs? How did they deserve for those to be addressed? You get to go back now and do that for them, because that kid still lives in you. That kid still lives in you. And, like, that's why, like, it's kind of a weird side note, but, like, you know how when people have self-worth wounds, their posture can reflect that. And I think how our body exists in space, in the space that it takes up, reflects the inner like world that we're experiencing, but it also reflects the compounded interest of all of the shit we've ever been through. So I find, like, with people who didn't feel that their what they had to say was important, or that their voice was valued in any way, they might have more of a stutter. They might struggle with speaking. Look at me. They might like slouch in their shoulders and, like, almost like tilt their head down and protect their throat. They might even have it in their solar plexus where, like, they curl over or they protect their stomach, because that's your sense of self. That's your sense of sovereignty. And it's like a weird side note, but it's about your inner child is an energy body within you, and until we go back and heal the parts of yourself that were hurt, that will show up in how your current body experiences life and how your nervous system experiences things. It's the last disc. So I kind of think that working through burnout, but also working through our own trauma, is also a process of learning how to stand up tall again, and learning how to take up all of the space that we are in our bodies without shame, without hiding, without having to protect, with the confidence that we can protect ourselves with boundaries and with our own voices. If you experienced or experience unmet needs or big emotions, big sensory experiences, if learning something new felt really scary to you when you were a kid and no one really ever walked you through that, no one ever kind of took your hand and said, it's okay, we're gonna do this together. It's okay to be scared when we're learning new things. Like, if nobody even fucking parented you through that and no one showed you that gentleness, I invite you to start showing yourself exactly what you were missing. Because I can guarantee you do it with others. You just don't think you deserve it, but you do. You do. You're likely somebody who's really amazing at validating other people and meeting their needs and holding space for them because of the stark contrast of your own experiences, which is the proof that you're capable of doing this for yourself. Burnout is the result of meeting everybody's demands and needs but our own. Recovery is acknowledging that you've overdone it without beating yourself up to shit for it. And validating that you can now make the adjustments that you need to, and you're capable of doing that and making those decisions. Follow your intuition in terms of everything, but in terms of what changes you would like to make and what those would, like, what would best serve. No one can decide that for you. And how you want to go about the changes, how quickly, the best way to make those transitions, and the best way to go about them. You're in control. You're the captain of the ship. You already know how to meet everyone else's needs. So this is about relearning and perhaps even unlearning what society told you that your needs are, and rehumanizing yourself. You are not an object of capitalism. You are not your labor. You are not your productivity. You are a divine fucking being that deserves to be hydrated, my goodness, that deserves to eat regularly and eat well and be nourished, that deserves to be safe, that deserves to be well, and that deserves to come out of burnout. You deserve to rest your way through burnout. You deserve to slow down. You deserve to breathe out. You deserve to exist exactly as you are. You deserve self-compassion. And you deserve to love yourself. I'm so fucking proud of you. If this has been an episode for you, if you're here right now, I love you. I'm so fucking proud of you. And I'm here with you. I am here. You are not alone. And I do honestly, if you are struggling, I invite you to reach out. We are in the midst of an absolute global mental health pandemic with everything that's been going on. You are not alone. Reach out to me, like, comment on a TikTok video and like be like, hey, I'm struggling. Or like DM me or email me or whatever. Go to my linktree, there's a bunch of options. But reach out to me if you need help. And it doesn't mean I'm like a crisis guy, but like, you're not alone. If you have any feedback or questions or areas that I could clarify about today's episode, feel free to use my like Q&A or TikTok or whatever the fuck, and reach out to me. And if you would like some more support around your burnout recovery, or if you would like to work with me in that capacity, along your healing journey, I do offer virtual guidance sessions that are directed by the person, and I can hold space for you. I can help you reframe some of those sharp thoughts and walk with you in your recovery journey. I am not a like therapist or anything by that means, but I do have a degree in child and youth care, which had a lot of counseling and trauma-informed background, and then I have, of course, my career history. So I'm really good at holding space for people, and if you are feeling alone, you don't need to purchase a service with me to not feel alone and to reach out to me, but if you would like to work with me, you're more than welcome to do that, and I would love to hear from you. You can book through my website. I offer these guidance sessions as a one-on-one service that's like a virtual through Zoom, and I also offer tarot and like oracle readings through that mechanism or through pre-recorded, so depending on what works better for you. And I also do birth chart readings, so if that's something that you're interested in, go check out my website. And if you would like to support me or support Mandago and her surgery fund, all of that is in my Linktree as well, so I invite you to check that out. If you do end up clicking on my Linktree, please sign some petitions while you are there. And yeah, thank you so much for being here. I love you. I'm so glad you exist. You are making it through. You are recovering. You are already doing better than you think you are. I love you. I love you. I love you. Fuck it up. Have a beautiful couple of weeks here. Enjoy this new moon phase, and we will see you at the full moon. Creep it real.